A professor mocked Elon Musk right in front of Karoline Leavitt, and minutes later, the White House press secretary shut her down in a stunning showdown. You won't believe what just happened. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. Karoline Leavitt, 27, didn't come here for a personal debate. She was sent by the White House to face a wave of criticism targeting the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, President Trump's reform initiative led by Elon Musk, which has sparked fierce controversy after mass federal employee layoffs. But today, when Musk was attacked right in front of her, Leavitt did something no one expected. Instead of delivering her usual polished remarks, she stood up, confronting it head-on. The packed auditorium, students, journalists, activists, suddenly fell silent. A sharp, compelling statement rang out, shaking the seminar. It silenced the renowned professor, stunned the audience, and when the video spread on X, it sent shockwaves across America. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. The bell rang to signal the start in room 101 at Stanford. Students poured in, laughter mixing with the sound of flipping pages. Leavitt stood at the corner of the stage, dressed in a deep blue business suit, her gaze sharp yet calm. As press secretary, she was there to explain DOGE policy to the public, especially as the opposition relentlessly attacked Musk and Trump. But then, Professor Emily Harper stepped up, exuding confidence. Her short gray hair gleamed, her eyes defiant. She skipped pleasantries and dove right in. Elon Musk, Harper declared, her tone dripping with sarcasm, a billionaire who thinks he can buy the government. This isn't reform. It's a tool for Musk to serve Tesla and SpaceX. The audience murmured, a few chuckling. Leavitt clenched her fists, her breathing quickening. She'd been told to stay calm, focus on defending the policy. The Stanford auditorium buzzed after Professor Emily Harper's opening salvo. Her gaze swept the crowd, cold as a blade, pausing briefly on Karoline Leavitt before continuing. Leavitt stood at the stage's edge, still gripping her notes, trying to maintain the composed exterior she'd honed through years of political pressure. But inside, a fire began to smolder. Harper wasn't just targeting Elon Musk. She was aiming at the entire Trump administration Leavitt represented. Harper stepped to the center of the stage, her low but sharp voice cutting through the microphone, slicing past the audience's whispers. "Look at this number," she said, raising her hand as if holding invisible evidence. Elon Musk owns $300 billion, more than the annual budgets of dozens of states combined. Meanwhile, American workers struggle with minimum wage, and he sits atop luxury, tweeting childish jokes on X. And now we're giving him control over a government department? What kind of joke is this? A ripple of laughter erupted from one corner of the room, where students in hoodies nodded in approval. But in the middle rows, a few journalists began scribbling faster, sensing the drama brewing. Leavitt frowned, her breathing growing heavier. She knew Harper wouldn't go easy. She was an economist with decades of experience, author of books criticizing tech elites like Musk. But these words weren't just academic theory. They were a pointed dagger stabbing at the policy Leavitt was sent to defend. DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, had been controversial since its inception, especially after Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy announced plans to fire thousands of federal employees in early March 2025 to streamline operations. The opposition called it a purge, while the White House insisted it was necessary efficiency. Leavitt had prepared a speech to explain, but Harper clearly had no intention of letting her speak first. Harper turned, pointing at the large screen behind her where a chart appeared, Musk's wealth compared to the average American salary. "This is reality," she stressed, her voice steely. "A man richer than our wildest dreams now decides who keeps their job, who loses it in the government. Over 10,000 people fired in just 2 months, and he calls it reform? I call it elite arrogance, using money to manipulate power with no regard for ordinary people." Scattered applause broke out, growing into a wave from the younger audience members. A student in the third row raised their phone, starting to record, eyes gleaming with excitement. Leavitt felt her heart race. She glanced at the crowd. Curious faces, skeptical eyes, and mocking smiles. Harper wasn't just attacking Musk. She was painting a picture of a selfish billionaire, a misguided administration, and Levitt, as press secretary, was the one left to clean up the mess. She'd faced the press daily, answered tough questions about Doge before Congress, but today felt different. This wasn't a press briefing she could control. It was a public arena, and Harper was playing her hand openly. The professor stepped closer to the podium, her voice dropping but still cutting like a blade. Let's talk about X, the platform Musk owns. What did he tweet last week? A joke about firing more people to save the budget? Hilarious, when you're not the one losing your job. Meanwhile, Tesla and SpaceX keep landing billion-dollar government contracts. Quite a coincidence when he's sitting in DOG, right? This isn't reform, folks. It's a conflict of interest in disguise. The murmurs in the room grew louder, some nodding, others shaking their heads in dissent. A journalist in the front row whispered to a colleague, "She's setting the stage on fire." Levitt gripped her hands tighter, her notes crumpling. She'd been trained to stay calm, respond with rehearsed lines. But Harper's words weren't just criticism. They were a blatant distortion in her view. Musk wasn't perfect, she knew that. He was eccentric, sometimes too blunt on eggs. But Dodge wasn't a joke. It was a plan Trump believed in, and Musk had put in the work, unpaid, to make real. She recalled last week's White House meeting when Musk outlined cutting $50 billion in wasteful spending. That wasn't manipulation. Harper smirked, her gaze flicking to Leavitt as if daring her to speak. "We need to ask," she continued, "who really benefits from Doge? The American people or Elon Musk's wallet? A man so rich it's unimaginable, now deciding the future of millions. I don't see that as democracy." Applause erupted again, louder and longer this time. A student in the back shouted, "Well said." Cameras panned quickly, capturing every second of the brewing storm. Karoline Leavitt stood still, her breathing heavy, her eyes locked on Professor Emily Harper smirking on stage. She felt heat rush to her face, not just for Musk, but because her own credibility and the White House's were under threat. The Stanford auditorium thundered with applause for Professor Emily Harper, but Karoline Leavitt no longer heard anything but the pounding of her heart in her chest. The crumpled notes had fallen to the floor at some point, leaving her hands empty, trembling slightly with the anger boiling inside. Harper stood there, center stage, her defiant gaze sweeping over her once more. Leavitt took a deep breath, her eyes blazing with unshakable resolve. She made her decision. There was no turning back. She had to stand up. Leavitt's first step echoed on the wooden floor as she moved from the stage's corner. The audience began to sense something was happening. The student in the third row stopped typing on their phone, looking up curiously. A journalist in the front row swung their camera toward her, the lens catching every move. Harper turned, the smirk on her lips faltering for a moment as Levitt approached the microphone. Whispers spread. Then the room fell deathly silent, as if everyone held their breath in anticipation. Leavitt stopped at the mic, her hands resting lightly on the podium. She didn't look at the audience yet, instead locking eyes with Harper, her gaze sharp as a blade slicing through the space between them. A few audience members leaned back, feeling the weight of the moment. A journalist whispered to a colleague, "What's she gonna do?" But Leavitt didn't leave them guessing long. She cleared her throat, and when she spoke, her voice rang out, calm, clear, but carrying an undeniable force. "Professor Harper," Levitt began, her voice cutting through the silence like a sword, "you say Elon Musk just uses his money to buy power, but do you actually understand what he's done?" The question hung in the air, sharp and direct. Harper raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting Leavitt to fire back immediately, and with a question rather than a defense. The audience stirred, a few whispering to each other, eyes glued to the stage. A student in the back muttered, "Is she really challenging Harper?" Levitt didn't pause for a reaction. She stepped forward, her voice still calm but now laced with an irresistible pressure. "You just called Doge a joke, called Musk a manipulator. You threw out a number, $300 billion, like it's proof of selfishness. But have you ever asked yourself where that money came from and how he's used it?" She paused, letting the questions sink into the audience. her gaze sweeping the crowd for the first time. A few nodded faintly, curiosity piqued, while others crossed their arms, waiting to see how far she'd go. Harper opened her mouth to interrupt, but Levitt raised a hand, a small but commanding gesture that stopped the professor cold. "I'm not finished," Levitt said, her voice firmer, and the room fell silent again. A journalist in the front row whispered into a mic, "This is going viral." Levitt continued, her eyes back on Harper, unwavering. "You talk about people losing jobs? 10,000 federal employees fired. But do you know why? Do you know what DOJ is trying to cut? Or do you just want to stop at numbers to get applause?" The murmurs rose again, but this time with a different tone. No longer pure applause for Harper, but a mix of shock and doubt. A student in the middle row turned to a friend, whispering, "Does she have a point?" Harper stood still, arms crossed, eyes narrowing as if sizing up her opponent. She wasn't used to being challenged head-on like this, especially by someone as young as Leavitt. But Leavitt didn't care about Harper's age or reputation. She was here for one reason, to defend the truth she believed in, and she wouldn't let Harper twist it for another second. "I was sent here by the White House," Levitt said, her voice now booming, "not to stand by while someone gets smeared just so you can score points with the crowd. You want to talk about truth? Then let me show you the truth, not through sarcasm, but through what's really happening." She paused, taking a breath, her hands clenching at her sides. Harper smirked, about to retort, but Levitt's gaze, sharp, unrelenting, made her hesitate. In that moment, control of the stage shifted. Levitt was no longer on the sidelines, no longer just a press secretary reading statements. She was gearing up for a showdown no one in that room could have predicted. The student with the phone in the third row gripped it tighter, thumb hovering over the record button, sensing they were about to capture a historic moment. Harper crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing, but the smirk had vanished. Levitt didn't give her a chance to interrupt. "Professor Harper," Levitt continued, her voice echoing through the auditorium, "you say Elon Musk just uses money to buy power. You call DOJ a joke, call him a manipulator. But let me ask you, and everyone here, one question. Do you really understand what he's done for America?" She paused, letting the question hang, her gaze sweeping the crowd. A few students leaned forward, curiosity sparked, while others crossed their arms, waiting to see what she could prove. Levitt took a breath, then pressed on, her voice now stronger, more compelling. "You bring up $300 billion like it's his crime. But do you know where that money came from? It didn't fall from the sky. Elon Musk built Tesla from a crazy idea into a company that's created millions of jobs across America, from factories in Nevada to California. Do you know what SpaceX has done? They've put America back at the forefront of the space race, breaking Russia and China's monopoly. Just last year, SpaceX launched over 100 satellites, bringing in billions in contracts and jobs for Americans. That's the truth, not sarcasm." The audience began to stir. A student in the third row whispered to a friend, "Does she really have the numbers?" A journalist in the front row scribbled faster, eyes lighting up as they realized this wasn't just an emotional speech. But Leavitt didn't stop. She stepped closer, her gaze fixed on Harper, her voice now like a hammer shattering the silence. "You talk about dog, about 10,000 federal employees fired. Yes, that's a real number. But do you know why? Because this government spends over $6 trillion a year, and hundreds of billions of that is wasted on outdated programs, unnecessary contracts. DOJ was created to cut that waste, and Musk, along with Vivek Ramaswamy, has worked unpaid to make it happen. You call that manipulation? I call it responsibility." The murmurs in the auditorium grew, but this time it wasn't just applause for Harper. A few nodded, their expressions shifting from doubt to reflection. Harper opened her mouth to rebut, but Leavitt raised her hand again, her voice firm. "I'm not done." Harper froze, clearly caught off guard by the young woman's resolve. Leavitt continued, her voice now carrying controlled anger. "You mentioned Musk's tweets, his jokes on X. Yes, he's not perfect. He's eccentric, sometimes too blunt. But have you ever asked yourself why someone that rich spends hours in White House meetings taking no salary to fix a system he's not obligated to fix? Do you know what he did last week? He laid out a plan to cut $50 billion in wasteful spending, not to pocket it, but to give it back to the American people. The room fell completely silent. A student in the middle row whispered, $50 billion? A journalist in the back stopped typing, looking up at Leavitt in astonishment. Harper stood still, arms still crossed, but her eyes no longer held the same confidence. Leavitt took another step, her voice lowering, but still sharp as a blade. You talk about conflicts of interest, Tesla and SpaceX getting government contracts. But did you know those contracts were signed before Doge existed, before Musk ever stepped into this administration? And do you know how much SpaceX has saved? Over $4 billion for NASA compared to competitors, thanks to their technology? That's the truth, not the manipulations you want people to believe. Scattered applause broke out from one corner of the room, small but distinct. A student in the third row shot up, shouting, "She's right." But Levitt didn't smile. She wasn't here for applause. She was here to set things straight. She turned to Harper, her gaze unrelenting. You want to talk about the American people? Then ask the families with jobs because of Tesla. Ask the engineers at SpaceX building the future. Ask the taxpayers who benefit when Doge cuts waste. Have you ever sat down and listened to them? Or do you just see Elon Musk through a lens of bias? A rich billionaire, so he must be the villain. Harper shifted, visibly uncomfortable. She opened her mouth, but this time Leavitt didn't give her a chance. You say this isn't democracy, she continued, her voice now ringing like a declaration of war, but I see the opposite. A man putting his reputation and time into fixing a broken system, not for money, not for personal power, but because he believes America can be better. You may not like him, but don't twist the truth just to score points with the crowd. The auditorium erupted in murmurs, but this time it was mixed with admiration. A journalist in the front row whispered into a mic, "She just knocked out Harper." A student in the back turned to a friend, muttering, "I didn't expect her to be this strong." Applause broke out again, louder, longer, from different corners of the room. Karoline Leavitt stood there, her eyes still locked on Professor Emily Harper, unflinching, as if waiting for her to respond. The applause faded, but the air remained heavy, tense enough that you could hear the breathing of hundreds of onlookers, students, journalists, activists, all fixated on the stage. Levitt had just landed a knockout blow, and everyone wanted to know what Harper, with decades of experience and a rock-solid reputation, would do to regain the upper hand. Harper stood still, arms tightly crossed, eyes narrowed at Levitt. For a moment she seemed on the defensive, her usual confidence shaken by Levitt's sharp arguments and concrete numbers. A journalist in the front row whispered to a colleague, "She's got Harper speechless." But then Harper took a deep breath, stepping closer to the mic, her demeanor hardening again, though her voice lacked its earlier edge. "Ms. Leavitt," she began, her tone low but striving for authority, "you speak well. Numbers, jobs, satellites. It all sounds impressive. But do you think a few figures can hide the truth?" The audience murmured, a few nodding, as if Harper had regained her footing. She raised a hand, her gaze sweeping the crowd, trying to reclaim attention. "I don't deny Tesla or SpaceX created jobs," she continued, her voice sharper. "But let's not forget those companies also bring Musk billions in profit." "And Doge? You call it cutting waste, but I see it as cutting livelihoods for thousands of families. 10,000 people out of work isn't a number to brag about. Those are real people, not stats on paper." Scattered applause rose from one corner, mostly from students who'd backed Harper from the start. Leavitt stood still, her eyes never leaving Harper, but she didn't interrupt. She knew Harper was trying to pull the audience's emotions her way, and she let her finish. Not out of fear, but because she wanted everyone to see the contrast between her reasoning and Harper's sarcasm. The professor stepped closer, her voice dropping, laced with familiar mockery. "You say Musk works unpaid? Fine. But he doesn't need a salary. He's got hundreds of billions to fall back on. What about the American people? They don't have that luxury when they lose jobs because of his decisions in Doge." A few shouts of, "That's right," came from the back, followed by louder applause. But Harper's confidence didn't last. Levitt tilted her head slightly, her gaze still piercing, and as the applause faded, she gave a faint smile, not to provoke, but as if she'd just realized something. Harper caught that smile, and her eyes flickered. "Am I done yet, Professor?" Levitt asked, her voice calm but brimming with challenge. The audience fell silent again, sensing Levitt still held control. A student in the third row whispered to a friend, "She's not backing down." Harper tried to counter again, her voice rising but this time lacking certainty. "You can paint Musk as a hero if you want, but don't forget, he wasn't elected. The people didn't give him the right to decide their lives. That's democracy, not what Doge is doing." She paused, expecting applause, but this time it was only scattered. The audience seemed split, some nodding with Harper, but many still watching Leavitt, waiting for her next move. And then the room exploded. A student in the middle row shot up, shouting, "But what has Musk done that you haven't?" That yell was like a spark. Another voice from the back countered, "He's just enriching himself." Applause clashed, and the auditorium quickly descended into chaos. A group of students started raising their phones to record, whispers turning into shouts. "She's right about Tesla," one yelled. "But what about the people who lost jobs?" another shot back. Harper raised her hands, trying to restore order, but the noise spiraled beyond her control. She looked at Levitt, her eyes now a mix of confusion and anger. Levitt stood still, saying nothing, but her gaze didn't waver. She didn't need to shout to hold the audience. Her silence only drew more attention. A journalist in the second row whispered to a colleague. She just took Harper's advantage without saying another word. The student with the phone in the third row stopped recording, muttering, "I've never seen Harper cornered like this." Amid the chaos, Harper stepped closer to the mic again, her voice trembling slightly but trying to stay composed. "Miss Leavitt," she said, her eyes straining to reclaim authority, "you ask good questions, I'll give you that. But don't think a few numbers can erase the bigger questions about power and accountability." That small concession from her, however slight, set the audience buzzing again. A few whispered, "Did she just back down?" Applause from Leavitt's supporters rang out, but boos came from the opposition too. Levitt didn't smile, didn't respond right away. She stood there, breathing steady, feeling the weight of what had just happened. The room was still chaotic, shouts, claps, arguments. But she knew she'd done what she needed to. She'd forced Harper to admit, even a little, that her stance wasn't absolute. Karoline Leavitt stood steady on the stage, her sharp eyes still fixed on Professor Emily Harper, as phones in the hands of the audience, from students to journalists, captured every moment of the dramatic showdown. Just minutes after Harper conceded that Leavitt's arguments were thought-provoking, a student in the third row, phone still warm from recording, hit upload on X. He typed a quick caption, "White House Press Secretary destroys professor at Stanford. Watch this and be shocked." The 3-minute video, capturing everything from Levitt standing up to the room erupting, started to spread. Within 30 minutes, it hit 50,000 views. By the end of the hour, it soared to 500,000. The hashtag Levitt v. Harper emerged, trending on X, just hours after the event. Clips of Levitt's points, Tesla created millions of jobs, Doge cuts waste, were sliced up, shared thousands of times. One X-user commented, "Karoline Leavitt just schooled Harper. This is how you defend the truth." The post got over 10,000 likes in a flash. But not everyone agreed. Another shot back, "She's just defending Musk, what about the jobless?" The debate raged, splitting the online crowd into two camps, Leavitt backers and Harper's loyalists. Journalists at the seminar didn't lag. A reporter from the front row who'd whispered, "This is going viral," posted immediately on X with the headline, "Press Secretary Leavitt faces off with Professor Harper at Stanford. Watch to believe." The post, with a video link, racked up thousands of retweets from major news accounts. Outlets like Fox News and CNN jumped in, quoting Leavitt and Harper word for word, turning the event into a national focal point. An ex-commentator wrote, "Leavitt didn't just defend Musk, she defended Trump's whole administration. Epic." Meanwhile, another jabbed, "She thinks a few numbers can hide the truth about Doge." And then the man at the center of it all spoke. Elon Musk, X's owner, retweeted the original student's video 3 hours after it dropped. He added, "Karoline gets the value of action over empty words. That's what America needs. Doge isn't a joke, it's the future." Musk's post hit over 200,000 likes in under an hour, catapulting the video to new heights. He followed up with, "Cutting $50 billion in waste isn't to enrich me, it's to give back to taxpayers. Harper should check facts before talking." Musk's clapback ignited more debate. A supporter wrote, "Musk and Levitt are the perfect team," while a critic fired, "He's still a selfish billionaire. Don't let Levitt fool you." Meanwhile, back in Washington, D.C., Levitt returned to her office after the seminar, still buzzing with adrenaline from the clash. She opened X on her phone, and her eyes widened at the numbers. The video had passed 2 million views. Notifications flooded in, from praise, "You're a hero," to criticism, "You're too pro-Musk." She gave a faint smile reading Musk's comment, relieved he'd weighed in, but she knew it wasn't over. Harper wouldn't stay quiet long. Sure enough, just a day later, Professor Emily Harper broke her silence with a lengthy X post. "Miss Levitt raised thought-provoking questions at Stanford," Harper wrote, her tone calm but no less firm. "I don't deny Tesla or SpaceX's contributions, but I stand by this. Unelected power in a billionaire's hands is a threat to democracy. I'm proud to teach my students to question, and that day I learned I need to question myself sometimes too. Still, I won't budge on Doge. Ms. Levitt, I hope you keep asking tough questions, but ask your administration some too." The post got over 50,000 likes, showing Harper still had a strong following, even if she'd had to yield a bit to Levitt. Harper's post sparked even more debate on X. One user wrote, "Harper admitting Levitt had a point. Rare to see her concede like this." Another countered, "She's just saving face. Levitt clearly won." Clips from the video spread everywhere, from political forums to student chat groups. A big account posted, "Leavitt turned Harper into a joke while staying professional, pure talent." Meanwhile, another sneered, "She's Musk and Trump's puppet. Don't be fooled by her numbers." The video kept spreading, hitting 10 million views in just 48 hours. Hashtag Dugabate and Leavitt Power trended non-stop, spawning thousands of posts dissecting every word from Leavitt and Harper. Some praised Levitt for defending the truth. She didn't just talk, she had proof. Others remained skeptical. Cutting waste or cutting people's lives? A Stanford student who filmed it posted, "I was there. Levitt shocked the whole room." Harper didn't know how to hit back. His post got over 20,000 likes, turning him into a minor X-celebrity. At the White House, Levitt sat in her office rewatching the video. She hadn't expected it to blow up this fast. A text from President Trump popped up. "Great job, Karoline, you made me proud." She smiled, but her eyes stayed pensive. She knew she'd won a battle Harper had to concede. Musk was defended, and Doge got positive attention. But she also knew the opposition wouldn't stop. X was still buzzing, and each new view brought a new opinion, praise or criticism. She couldn't control at all. On X, the argument raged on. One user posted, "Levitt just showed a press secretary doesn't just read statements, she fights." Another shot back, "She's just a mouthpiece for Musk and Trump, nothing more." The video hit 20 million views by the weekend, becoming a national phenomenon. A political commentator tweeted, "This moment will be remembered." Levitt didn't just defend Musk, she reshaped how we see Doge. Meanwhile, another warned, "Don't let her fool you, it's just PR." Levitt set her phone down, taking a deep breath. She didn't need everyone to agree, she just wanted them to think. And as she watched the view count climb by the second on X, she knew she'd done that. But she also knew this battle was just the beginning. Levitt didn't get complacent. She understood X remained divided. Half hailed her as a hero, half called her a puppet. She didn't need universal approval. She just wanted people to reflect. The Stanford event taught her a lesson. One moment can shift perspectives, but only if you dare to stand up for the truth. Harper conceded to her, the audience debated, and Musk spoke up. That was enough to prove bias doesn't always win. The story of Karoline Leavitt at Stanford University sharply reflects the polarized, contentious state of American society today, where platforms like X amplify every opinion, from glowing praise to harsh criticism. Levitt, as press secretary, stood up to defend Elon Musk against Professor Emily Harper's mockery, not just out of duty, but because she believed in the truth behind Doge, a controversial initiative tied to the firing of 10,000 federal employees. The video's 20 million views on X showed how a single confrontation can shift views, but it also exposed the divide. One side praised her for backing Musk with data on Tesla and SpaceX, the other slammed her for ignoring the pain of those who lost jobs. This mirrors how Americans now debate big issues, from economics and tech to government policy, often driven more by emotion than full facts. The takeaway here is, in a society rife with bias and misinformation, you need courage to stand for what you believe, but it must be grounded in truth, not just feeling. Leavitt didn't yell or attack Harper personally. She used sharp reasoning like Doge $50 billion waste cut to push back. Americans today, whether students, workers, or leaders, can apply this when facing debate online or off. Prepare well, speak clearly, and be ready for pushback. A moment like Leavitt's might not change everything, but it will make people rethink. In my view, Karoline Leavitt's stand at Stanford was a bold move that cut through the noise. She didn't just defend Elon Musk. She challenged us to look beyond bias and dig into the facts. Doge's waste cuts, Tesla's jobs, SpaceX's innovation. I admire her guts to face a seasoned professor head-on, proving truth matters more than applause. But I get the other side too. 10,000 layoffs sting, and unelected power like Musk's can feel undemocratic. It's a messy debate, efficiency versus empathy, vision versus accountability. What do you think? Did Leavitt nail it, or is Harper right about unchecked billionaire influence? I lean toward action over rhetoric, but I'd love to hear your take. Thanks for watching this wild ride with me. Drop your thoughts below, hit like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more showdowns like this. Let's keep the conversation going.